brother, brother, brother. There's far too many of you dying. You know we got to find a way to bring some love in here today.
What's going on, USGBC family? Welcome to the inaugural Equity Summit, streaming to you live from across the globe. To get us started, please welcome the President and CEO of USGBC and GBCI, Mahesh Ramanujam.
For a while, I've been talking about how people are our priority, and that is true. That's why we recently announced our new, relevant, and timely vision for the second generation of USGBC. Healthy people in healthy places equals a healthy economy. And that's why going forward, we'll prioritize our efforts to build people's trust that their spaces are healthy and have a positive impact not only on them, but the economy at large. But today, I want to be more specific. Last year, I saw a tweet from a 10-year-old Zane Covey that really hit home. Zane has been striking outside of New York City Hall for almost a year and shared a photo with the words, "Almost a year of climate strike, I feel like I am invisible." First of all, no one, especially a child, should ever feel invisible. Secondly, that word is what I want to focus on today. Invisibility is a big problem in the sustainability movement on many levels, but particularly on a few that pertain to our work. And the current global crisis brings attention to just how big a problem this could become. The impact of COVID-19 will be felt for years to come on the economy, on people, and on our way of life. 50% of the world's population already lives below the poverty line, and the IMF estimates in 2020 and 2021 the cumulative GDP loss from this pandemic could be around $9 trillion. As of this morning, 40 plus million Americans are without a job. So it's no secret the most vulnerable among us will feel the gravest impacts. In fact, they already do. We are going to have extraordinary mental, physical, and financial health repercussions in nearly every part of society. Remaining resilient, both in business and life, will require every industry and individual to adapt at a pace we might never have thought possible. But what lies ahead is also a responsibility for us to design a more healthy, safe, resilient, and most importantly, equitable future for all. And as you listen over the next 2 days, I want you to ask yourself what that word means to you, equity. And more specifically, what does it mean in the context of green building? It is safe to say that each of us wants everyone to have a safe and a healthy place to call home. But over the next 2 days, I want you to ask yourself, what role do you play in connecting the dots to get that done? And what partner can USGBC be to you and your organization in making that goal a reality? And most pressingly, when you answer these questions, ask yourself if you have accounted for the people that are not in this virtual room, for the people that feel invisible. That's a question I've been asking myself for a long time now, and I've implored our team to continue keeping at the front of everything we do. And before we get started, I want to frame our conversation by sharing some stories that exemplify what equity means to me in the context of our work at USGBC. First, there is our LEED Platinum certified orphanage in Haiti. Prior to the 2010 earthquake, UNICEF estimated there were approximately 380,000 orphans, with the earthquake doubling that staggering number. The first infants arrived at the orphanage this year. When I think of equity, I think about how this orphanage will transform the lives of more than 2,000 children over the next 5 to 10 years, giving them hope and a sense of responsibility and possibility for the future. Then there is this Green Janitor Education Program led by John Barton, Director of the Climate and Environmental Justice Program at SEIU. At the forefront of building operations are janitors who play a critical role in helping buildings reduce energy and water consumption. The GJEP was established to create vocational training and teaches janitors the fundamentals of green building practices. The curriculum covers green cleaning, energy and water conservation, health and safety, and waste diversion, as well as why these practices are important and how to implement them at work and home. Since its inception in 2014, GJEP has trained over 1,000 janitors in buildings across California and is now expanding into Seattle, Denver, Portland, Chicago, and DC. When I think about equity, I think about how GJE people provide training to janitors who are largely people of color and immigrants and provide them with new knowledge and new skills, which may lead to new career paths. Then there is Lava May, which originated in San Francisco when Denise Sandoval noticed elderly neighbors living in the streets after being evicted. When she met a woman who said she would never get clean, Sandoval was devastated and knew she had to do something. So she created a program that converts retired buses into mobile hygiene facilities for the homeless. Today, the program is expanded to Los Angeles and beyond, and Lava May has partnered with Polar to make sure that with the state's drought, they keep as green a footprint as possible while providing showers to countless people. When I think about equity here, I think about people like Denise, who are committed to a greener good, a world in which we prioritize sustainability, health and wellness, resilience, and equity. A world in which human life is not compromised, but instead championed as the focus of why we build in the first place. Then there is this leadership of Ann Reddy, the sustainability coordinator at Baltimore's Office of Sustainability. On Earth Day 2019, Baltimore's mayor and city council adopted its sustainability plan, which was updated to lead with an equity lens to broaden the scope of voices represented. And believes that addressing today's challenges through equity is essential for a sustainable, resilient future. And in Baltimore, when talking about sustainability, it also means addressing issues of race and place. The city looks to ensure the impacts of institutional racism are considered and provides frameworks to incorporate equity considerations during design, decision-making, and implementation while encouraging accountability. The Sustainability Commission and the Office of Sustainability focus their work on supporting and lifting underserved communities. How are they doing this? Through a wide sweeping approach. For example, the city has co-created a network of community resiliency hubs with residents supported by grant funding to purchase supplies, equipment, and provide energy efficiency upgrades and opportunities for solar. Multiple city agencies also provide energy efficiency programming, serving low and moderate income residents, as well as offering grant and loan funds to organizations serving low income individuals. Residents receive weatherization programming along with education, and for many, including seniors living on fixed incomes, it helps enable them to remain in their homes. All of these initiatives and more also help lower utility costs for those who need it most, and at their core, address equity, access, efficiency, and sustainability. Now, let's be honest. We, USGBC, is just getting started. That's why at Greenbook 2019 last year, we announced our creation of the USGBC Equity Program to raise visibility of what organizations like SEIU and people like Denise and Ann of what the USGBC community as a whole is doing around social equity. The program will establish an annual framework for every member of our community where you can report on what you're doing around it. Everyone who wants to can participate. It'll be voluntary and we'll ask what you're doing, taking into account that bandwidth and capabilities are very different for individuals, member companies, lead buildings, lead cities and communities, and even GBCI projects. From this, we'll create a report that doesn't just celebrate the leadership of the people who are actually doing the work around social equity, but that helps clearly delineate what leadership and allyship here looks like. A committee will also be formed this year that I will work directly with to create a framework for social equity. And by providing and by working with a variety of partners around the globe, we'll make sure we develop a detailed global vision for USGBC, while also going into regional and local implications. That committee, I promise you, will be made up of individuals both within and beyond those of who you are here today. It'll be made up of people who have felt the isolation that Zane and many of his counterparts feel. Those who have experienced the unconscionable weight of loneliness and invisibility that comes with wanting, with deserving to be seen. Those who should be, but are often unaccounted for. those who deserve visibility over vulnerability, those who, like all of us, deserve a guaranteed standard of living. 11 years ago, today, I joined USGBC. It is very meaningful for me that we are kicking off this work today. So thank you for joining us. And here we are to listen and learn from all of you. Thank you, and good luck with the conference.
Thank you, Mahesh. Next up, with progress and perspectives from the Lead Social Equity Working Group, please welcome past Working Group Chair and current member of the Lead for Cities and Communities Working Group, Joel Todd.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you are. It's very exciting to be here today, and I'm already charged up reading the chat notes that people are sending in. So I think this is going to be a great 2 days. And I'd like to thank Mahesh for bringing our Social Equity Working Group into this planning process that he just talked about. Over the past year, we've worked with him to come up with ideas for what USGBC could actually do on social equity based on the years that our working group has been in effect. We don't have to talk about the inequities that exist around the planet. We all know about them, we care about them, and that's one of the reasons that we're here today. They've been brought into really a much more stark reality over the last couple of months. And our group, USGBC, and our members and our friends can't solve all of the problems that we see, but we need to think really hard about what we can address and get started addressing those things and bringing in as many people with us so that we can move forward and get things done. Our Social Equity Working Group was formed a little over a decade ago. It grew out of some informal discussions that were taking place with the USGBC Board of Directors, staff, and the volunteers. And there was a real feeling that we needed to move forward on social equity. So this group was formed of volunteers in different professions. The first thing we had to do was to really figure out what social equity meant in the context of buildings and building projects. Well, what could we address? What was in our scope of influence? So that was one of our first tasks. And since most of us were in the field of architecture, design, engineering, those kinds of things, we realized that we were not the experts. And so we talked to advocates and activists and experts of various types around the country and, in fact, around the world. We also reviewed other green building rating systems that existed to see if any of them had great approaches to bringing equity into their systems. And then we thought, well, social equity is really about people. And so for whom? Social equity for whom? Who are the people that we're trying to reach? And we thought about it in three ways. People who are in the project team, and that includes the design firms and the construction workers. Social equity for the people in the community surrounding the project that were going to be affected for good or for not so good by the project. And social equity in the material supply chain, product supply chain, to try to ensure human rights for everyone in that supply chain, no child labor, no forced labor, that sort of thing. So we came up with 3 pilot credits that we put in the pilot credit library, which is the way that LEAD houses and tests new ideas. It's a place where credits can go in, they can be revised, projects can use them, and then they can eventually be brought into the regular rating system. We started consulting with people around the world about social equity because we realized that our perspective from the United States was not the same as the perspectives around the world. So we were able to gain a lot of knowledge that way. We developed some education programs and resources, and recently, over the past year, we worked with Mahesh on a social equity roadmap for LEAD and beyond LEAD. So I'm going to go through really quickly a few of the things that were in that roadmap. Some are underway, some have been approved, and some are still in development. One of the things we realized in looking through the LEAD rating systems is that a lot of the credits actually have a beneficial impact on equity, or could with minor revisions, but it's not evident to people who are using the system. So one of the things we're going to do is revise the credit intents for LEAD credits to highlight aspects of those credits that can affect equity, just to start raising awareness among project teams. Also, there are a lot of equity issues that are not addressed at all that could be. So it would be great to be able to add some new credits, which we could do through that pilot credit library, and to maybe add a new category of credits in addition to energy and water and indoor environmental quality, have one on quality of life and equity, health, resilience, those kinds of issues. Those are bigger changes and probably can't happen as quickly as some of the other ones that we're proposing. And of course, we need to create education programs and communications and all of those kinds of things to support the practitioners who are going to be implementing these ideas. And there are two new tools that we have proposed. One's already in effect and the other one is under development. The first is a social impact checklist. This is a planning tool, and it's designed to help project teams right from the beginning think about what they can do in the area of impact. And it asks questions about, do you have a diverse design team? Do you have local professionals on your design team that can bring a sense of place to your work? It asks questions about how the project will communicate with the community and how the project will be a good neighbor during the demolition and construction, and how projects can celebrate place and history and the culture of an area. And the checklist is now in the integrative process credit. You can use it. It's now in exemplary performance, and we've recommended that it be brought in as a requirement for all projects to use the checklist in that initial planning process. You can find the checklist on the USGBC website, and I've got the website at the bottom of the slide there. The other tool we are developing is called a social impact scorecard. And this, while checklist happens during the planning process, the scorecard occurs at the end, and it can look at achievements. What has a project been able to actually accomplish? It's based on those pilot credits that we just talked about, not just the 3 that we developed, but there are lots of other pilot credits that have to do with equity on inclusive design and more on worker safety, and there are quite a few of them. So the way the scorecard would work is that a project team could use as many of the credits as they want, and if they achieve a certain minimum number, they could be recognized by USGBC for that accomplishment. They could put it on their web pages and the USGBC page and have that recognition. And it could be used by LEED projects, but it could also be used by projects that aren't certifying under LEED, just to get more people engaged in this work. Now, we realized early on that a lot of the equity issues that we wanted to address couldn't be addressed at the individual building scale, which is what we were working with LEED at the time. So we were really delighted when LEED for Cities and Communities was developed, and it suddenly gave us the ability to work at the appropriate scale, so that you can look at disparities in a city regarding access to green space or transit. And those planning issues can be dealt with on a city or community scale, whereas an individual building is very limited in what they can do. So this gives us the ability to work at the appropriate scale with the appropriate tools. Our Social Equity Working Group gave the LEED for Cities and Communities staff at USGBC some comments on their original draft. And one of our comments centered on the fact that the metrics that were used tended to be medians or aggregate data, and they didn't account for the disparities that can exist across communities and cities. And that struck us as a real need to add. So we suggested that there be a credit, and it became a prerequisite, for collecting data and mapping of the city demographics, services, and assets. And when you map those things and you lay those maps side by side and you start overlaying those, you can see where the concentrations are of issues and problems that need to be solved. It's good for highlighting those issues, and it's also good for helping the community see and understand the things that you're looking at. So this roadmap that we developed with Informed Mahesh also went beyond LEED. We realized that for us to be able to move into this really new field for many of us in design, construction, even planning, we need case studies, we need stories, we need lots of resources to enable these project teams and organizations to move forward. We need to engage with new people. We need to listen to all the people who've been doing this work for a long time. We need some research, and USGBC could participate and co-sponsor research forums on some of those really intractable issues that we talk about, displacement and gentrification and homelessness, and how do we identify the best practices and get them out to the people who can use them. USGBC could engage members in mentoring so that we can increase the diversity in our professions. And there's some very good examples of those kinds of programs going on. And most of all, none of this will happen at USGBC without partners. There are people out there in the world who've been doing this work for a long time, and it's critically important that USGBC learn from all of them. Finally, USGBC, we've suggested, needs to walk the walk, encourage members to do the same. There's JUST and B Corp programs that can measure the equitability of your individual organization. USGBC could come up with a code of ethics if it wanted to, similar to what AIA and other professional organizations do. That's something that's just sort of getting talked about, but we think it's has a lot of promise. So to summarize, our work over the past decade has led us to envision a USGBC that leads on equity, while it still learns from those who have a lot more experience and expertise. It's a partnership. And we also envision a USGBC that focuses on what we can do, where we can make a difference, where we can make our best contribution, and how we can help our field move forward and really do the kinds of work that needs to be done. So I really am looking forward to hearing all of the talks today. I'm, like I said, very excited, even just seeing the things that are coming up in the chat. So thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to introduce our recommendations. And I expect to walk away from these 2 days with a head full of new ideas that I hope I can put into operation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel. And a reminder to all participants, please use the chat function. Tell us who you are, where you are, and what you're most excited about with today's summit. Next up, please welcome USGBC Senior Vice President, Kimberly Lewis.
Good morning, everyone. Shout out, whoop, whoop, to all the USGBC fam. We are really excited about welcoming you all for this inaugural USGBC Equity Summit. I also want to take the opportunity to thank Joel and Todd, the Social Equity Working Group, my boss, Mahesh Ramanujam, and a shout out to my gifted teenagers from Baltimore. They're truly rising. Thank you for your opening song to set the stage and the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish over the next 2 days. Since my boss is about data, I would have been big and bold and threw out numbers, but we are 881 attendees registered. Just 30 days it took us to bring this together, to bring all of the voices, the folks that we've built this relationship over the year, coming together with you, our members today, and we're proud about the work that we will do moving forward. Working to drive equity to the center of the green building industry, I believe, reveals an age-old narrative of both the spiritual evolution and our moral progress as a global society that shares a vision of abundance. What is abundance? The best description I have found comes from Scripture. And I live and embody that all the way from the work that I do at my church, Harvest United Ministries, and I've been able to work with you all in my years here at USGBC. And Scripture states abundance and with no waste. After all had eaten of what began as 2 fishes and 5 loaves to feed 5,000 men. Unfortunately, ladies, they didn't count us in those days. But the disciples gathered up all the crumbs, and there were 12 baskets full, 1 per disciple. I have turned this moment and this scripture into my personal and professional foundation and mantra. It's how I'm able to serve with joy, and I believe it is the moral imperative of sustainability. It is what has brought us all here for these next 2 days. And it's this last week's events have shown us and given light to. And if anything, It's that we need more love. Before we embark on this journey, I'm going to take you back in time to the earlier years of USGBC. In 2005, our former board chair, George Bandy, announced a call for diversity, equity, and inclusion for the green building community during our first annual conference hosted in Atlanta, Georgia. This work laid the foundation for a greenbuilt narrative focused on social equity and diversity. Through the Legacy Project, we hosted our first disaster response working groups in response to Hurricane Katrina. From there, USGBC Board of Directors Chair Sandy Wiggins established an organizational guiding principle to demonstrate social equity and inclusion. Key stewards from small and large architecture firms worked to create a best practice white paper defining the green building industry's role in helping communities and cities respond to disasters and rebuild resilient and sustainable. This is where LEAD showed up strong in the affordable housing sector. In the years since then, we have worked tirelessly to weave equity into the work that we do, from establishing the Natural Talent Design Competition to standing up a grant program to support affordable green neighborhood development and launching the Green Apple Day of Service through the Center for Green Schools. We have kept equity in mind through our actions, but is this enough? We are committed to raising the standard of living for all, but what does that look like in practice? How do we know our vision is complete? These questions have never been more critical. It is times like these that force us to leave behind what we thought we knew. As Mahesh said earlier, it's no secret that the most vulnerable among us will feel the gravest impacts of COVID-19 and its repercussions. As we envision a new future, we also understand that it is vital to be intentional about social equity, both as a goal and an outcome. It is not something that will just happen regardless of the purity of our intention. So let's have a level set. We want to be comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations. So I'm laying it out on the table. Trust the conversations, trust your colleagues, trust the members here, and be open to pushing us. That is why we're having this listening and learning tour. You are here because you care about the mission and work. It is purposeful and it is a call. With this Equity Summit, and I anticipate having several more summits, so we won't get it all done this week. We are engaging on a listening and learning tour that will fuel how USGBC 2.0 defines equity, identifies actions, and achieves equity outcomes. We are an organization that moves markets and achieves transformation through the power of our members. Collaboration, alignment, cohesion. These are keys to positive change. Today, we will listen and learn. We are going to hear from our members and stakeholders to find out what is most pressing to you. What have you done that has made the difference in how people live? We will also hear from our keepers of the heart. This is a core group of individuals who represent and have historically championed USGBC's work in equity, some amongst many. This team of leaders will carry the banner for the work that must be done over the next 2 days, holding USGBC to a high standard. And every time we convene under the banner of equity, we will introduce new keepers of the heart. If this is a role where you would like to serve, please inbox us today. Tomorrow, we'll dig deeper into the topics presented today and build them into the foundation that underpins our equity roadmap. It is imperative that you take your seat at the table, make your voice heard, and that you are focused and ready to work. Our challengers, A group of longtime authorities in social equity beyond the green building industry will inspire us to ensure that our vision for equity is complete by identifying gaps and opportunities for more effective outcomes. Earlier, I shared this list, and it's impressive, but I'm biased. It represents 15 years of work done by you, our members, volunteers, and our broader USGBC staff and team. Shout out to the staff. But is it complete? There are 3 levels of change when it comes to our work. Change that is incremental, change that is evolutionary, and change that is disruptive. Each necessary, each has meaning, and each has value. I can easily argue that our work has been incremental and yes, even evolutionary. But Mahesh has asked me, have we been disruptive? What does it mean to be any of these? That is what we are here to define. Fragmentation will never get us to scale in our commitments. It will never give rise to a complete vision. Incomplete visions lead to incomplete goals. Incomplete goals do not get results. And we are here for results. I am thankful to Bob Berkebaugh, the founder and the ultimate keeper of the USGBC Keepers of the Heart, and a green building mentor of mine. He shared this quote with me. In a recent Financial Times article, Arundhati Roy wrote, historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. What world are we leapfrogging into? And what will be revealed within us and through us that will illustrate a narrative of abundance, love, with enough for all? According to Berkebaugh, it will be a world that is loving first, open, a world that creates a regenerative economy and sequesters carbon. It will also be a world that lifts thinking and reaches beyond our current time. I will continue to serve with joy to reach that goal, and I'm asking you to join us. I now safely transition you into the care of our Keepers of the Heart for the next 2 days. Thank you.